Connor McDavid got hurt, scared us all to death, and the Oilers lost. That sucked.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Thursday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. I want to thank everyone that is making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one streamed sports podcast network. On today's show, we are going to walk through the very difficult 6-4 loss to the Anaheim Ducks. We will start out talking about Connor McDavid's night, the injury, what the early conversation is, his game once he returned from said injury scare going down the tunnel. In our second segment, we'll talk about why this series is being defined by play at the net front and why that's something the Oilers have really struggled with in this series, and it does not suit their personnel well. And then in our final segment, we'll take a deep breath. We'll try and reset and start framing our mindsets going into game number 3 on Friday. So to start out, you knew Anaheim was going to have some jump. Generally speaking, we see teams that lose game ones adapt, adjust, and find ways to improve upon what didn't work for them in game number 1. And the Ducks, a lot more aggressive in transition, a lot more willing to take chances to break plays up as they develop. It unlocked doors going back the other way. It forced the Oilers into a lot of mistakes. And ultimately, that's the story of this game for me. And when you are in a series like this, where both teams have that little voice in their ear saying, go for it, make the run, make the run, make the run. It kind of turns out like pro clubs, if you've ever played that game mode in FIFA, where everybody controls an individual player on the field, but you play with 8 people who are all used to controlling an entire team by themselves. Everybody's pushing up. And that leaves you susceptible off the counter. That leads you to guys being in the same spot. And that's what brings us to the McDavid injury. So McDavid, lower body injury. He collides with Mattias Ekholm because he and Ekholm are both entering the zone at the same time. McDavid immediately, when he gets up, he tries to put weight on his leg, doesn't cooperate with him, goes off. He sits on the bench for a couple seconds, tries to gut it out. He goes down the tunnel. He's gone for probably 5 to 10 real minutes of real time passing, a handful of minutes within the game. He comes back to the bench. He doesn't immediately come on. The next time he does come on, that shift, we're all watching with bated breath. He doesn't really have an opportunity to get involved with the play. The puck's away from him. He takes a U-turn, goes to the bench. Okay. They get a power play opportunity. Okay. I'm telling myself this will be my barometer as to whether or not he's healthy. And sure enough, Bouchard leaves that puck for him at the top of the circles in their own zone. McDavid builds up to a gallop, goes through the neutral zone, gains the offensive zone cleanly. He looks more or less fine. Maybe not as high-end top speed as you would typically expect, but not discernibly different from what you would usually see on an Oilers power play zone entry. But as this game went along and as the mistakes started to accumulate and as the Oilers' desperation increased, you saw McDavid very similarly to what you saw in each of the last 2 Stanley Cup finals, what you saw in the gold medal game of the Olympics. You see a player with an immense individual personal responsibility. It's not just that McDavid wants to win, it's that he understands when the game is in these situations where you're down a goal late and you're out there with your team's best players, you're out there with Bouchard, with Draisaitl, with Hyman, and we're chasing it. We need a goal. You need to do whatever you can to facilitate that goal. That's when Connor can, on occasion, get into trouble because he's going too fast. You know, I'll give you a very, very simple example, but the way Connor will occasionally overskate a puck because he's moving his hands too fast is very similar to if you do a lot of public speaking, the way your brain works a lot faster than your mouth can possibly move. So occasionally you're going to trip on your own words because you're trying to speak words out of your head that haven't been formulated yet. Or in the case of someone like me, you talk so fast trying to keep up with your strain of consciousness that you end up inevitably stumbling over your words because you're so excited or nervous or what have you. And when Connor gets in those cases, it's not so much that he makes a bad play, it's that he forces it. And those pucks to the middle, to no one in particular, those blind passes where on occasion he's anticipating someone being there and they're not. When you're the greatest player in the world, you are entitled to some grace. Was Connor great tonight? His underlying numbers were really good. 60% of the shot attempts, 60% of the scoring chance attempts, 75% of the expected goals. McDavid, by all accounts, had a really good underlying numbers night. But when you go back and you look through the tape, the decision-making was a little left something to be desired. And I understand he's probably running on a lot of adrenaline. His ankle probably doesn't feel great. Now that the game's over and some of that adrenaline has dissipated, I imagine it's probably going to swell up pretty badly, and he probably won't practice going into game number 3, but we'll keep an eye on that, of course, as we go into game number 3 on Friday. But McDavid has yet to register a point in this series. The Oilers' power play, which we'll talk about a lot in our final segment of the show, is 0 for 6 through the first 2 games of this series. Those 2 themes, McDavid pointless, no power play goals, are inherently interconnected. And much to the Ducks' credit, they have done a really good job on the penalty kill of forcing the Oilers to the perimeter, forcing them to settle for Evan Bouchard point shots. And that Draisaitl one-timer, the Oilers haven't really been able to get it set up cleanly. They got another one tonight. They ran a give and go with him and McDavid from behind the net, and Leon got a decent look at it. And the margin of error in these sequences is so small, where all we're talking about is that shot goes in. Okay, it's 5-5 and we go to overtime. And you had enough chances on the power play tonight. Now, again, the Oilers' power play is not as volume-centric as it's been in years past, but it's predicated on creating the highest possible danger chances. And that means we got to pass the puck around a lot. And as I talked about after game number 1, some of my frustrations where they went 0 for 2, they need to have the dual axis movement. They not only need to keep the puck moving clockwise or counterclockwise around the offensive zone, they also need to have interplay between the puck carriers, where puck carriers are going to intersect with each other and change where they are in the structure of the power play. So the penalty killers have to pass each other off. And that's something we're going to talk about a lot in our second segment when it comes to even strength defense, both for the Oilers and Ducks, because you are watching this series at even strength be defined by net front play and cycle play, which is something the Oilers have the personnel to be good at in the offensive zone, but defensively, their defensive group is not particularly adept at what they need to do in that capacity. But while McDavid has no points and the power play is 0 for 6 through 2 games, this is the best player in the world. This was the league's best power play in the regular season. The Ducks had a mediocre penalty kill in the regular season, and they take a lot of penalties. They took 4 tonight, more than they took in game number 1. I expect the Oilers to get this phase of the game rectified, especially being that they are scoring at even strength, which means this is more or less an execution problem than it is a personnel problem. On that note, we're going to take our first break on today's edition of Locked On Oilers. When we get back, we'll dive into that net front cycle game that is giving the Oilers a hard time in their own end and why it's deciding this series right after this. If you've got a sweet tooth like I do, you know how tough it is to find that perfect treat without all the sugar. That's why Cotton Candy 5-Hour Energy Shot brings that nostalgic flavor back in a whole new way. This is that classic cotton candy taste you remember, with a tasty caffeine boost and 0 sugar. It's a quick, easy way to satisfy that sweet craving while keeping things simple and on the go. I've always loved cotton candy, but you can't be eating sweets all day. This is a great alternative. The flavor really does bring that throwback fruity vanilla vibe, and it's surprisingly smooth. It's become my go-to when I want something sweet without going overboard. Bring on the sweetness with Cotton Candy 5-Hour Energy Shots. Available online now at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. ED is way more common than most guys think. Millions of guys deal with it at some point, and that's exactly why HIMS offers a straightforward way to handle it. HIMS connects you with licensed healthcare providers online, giving you access to legitimate ED treatment options from the comfort of your own home. No awkward appointments, no pharmacy lines, just a straightforward process that makes it easier to take care of yourself. The whole process is simple. You complete a quick online intake and a provider reviews your information. If treatment is right for you, it ships discreetly to your door in discreet packaging, which makes the whole experience feel private and stress-free. It's straightforward, transparent, and designed to make getting care feel easy. To get simple, online access to personal, affordable care for ED, hair loss, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/LockedOnNHL. That's hims.com/LockedOnNHL for your free online visit. hims.com/LockedOnNHL. Thank you so much to everybody who is hanging out on this Thursday edition of Locked On Oilers. And I know they lost tonight, and you're probably sitting here on your way to work, your way to school, on your run at the gym Thursday morning with a bad taste in your mouth. But we got each other. We got the Everydayer Club. I've been in there pretty much during all the Oiler playoff games and popped in even on the days off just to see what the conversation was at. The games tonight, pretty good. I was relatively impressed with the way the Flyers came out and put the Penguins away. They're up 3-0 in that series. Minnesota-Dallas is in double overtime as of the time I'm recording this, so we'll see how that shakes out. But for me, coming out of game number 2, it really struck me how much of this game is being decided in and around the net front. And that area of the game is slowly getting phased out. And I think a lot about guys like Jeff Bukaboom, who 30 years ago were essential components on multiple Stanley Cup teams. Guys that skated reasonably well, were bigger, nasty, spent a lot of time in the net front, eating cross checks, trying to occupy space or cross checking other guys, trying to get them out of the way. And that type of defenseman, if you can't skate anymore, that type of guy doesn't get playing time. And there are some teams that try and buck this. We saw the Golden Knights win the Stanley Cup a couple of years ago with a pretty large defensive group. The Blues with Doug Armstrong had the biggest defensive group of the last handful of years on the back end, blocking a lot of shots, a lot of guys with long reaches, able to get in passing lanes. And number one, that really jumped out to me tonight in the Ducks' defensive approach. I thought the Ducks did a tremendous job of breaking up passing lanes and forcing the Oilers into plays they didn't really want to make. And that ties into what we had said before about McDavid not really getting the chances he wanted, maybe forcing the puck a little bit. And net front play, especially defensively in today's game, it's a real pain. You don't have the same leeway from officials you did 20, 30 years ago about clearing that net front area. You're going to be jockeying for position. You are desperately trying to give your goalie a line of sight to wherever the puck is. And when you can't, you get results like you did tonight. And both goalies had a rough go of it. Neither Lucas Dostal or Connor Ingram had a particularly good game. Looked a lot like guys just could not follow the puck. And again, you're, as an offensive team, trying to get traffic in front. You're trying to create dangerous offense. And as much as it irks me every time a commentator or an analyst on TV says, you got to get pucks on net as analysis because it doesn't really explain anything, it's the most reductive way to explain hockey. This time of year, when you can simplify your game and you can create the types of offense the Ducks and the Oilers were able to tonight, because of the space you were able to occupy at the net front, that's a real advantage. So think about it like this. We identified that Jake Wallman and Ty Emberson pair going into the playoffs as being a cause for concern. They weren't particularly adept at clearing the net front. They weren't particularly adept at the physical components of the game. We know Evan Bouchard, though one of the 5 to 10 best defensemen in the world, struggles at clearing the net front. He was the one who was probably closest to the game-deciding goal that Anaheim scored before they had scored the empty netter. That puck ricochets off of both him and Mattias Ekholm before it ricochets out to Ryan Poehling, who scores the eventual game-winning goal. And the thing about active defense and the reason the cycle game and the net front become effective over time, it's all downstream of each other. I talked about this a little bit the other day when I was talking about the importance, I should say, of transition play, because we would associate breakout passes going from defense to offense as offensive traits for defensemen. But that is an essential part of playing good defense in the contemporary NHL. You have to be able to get pucks up ice. You have to be able to move the puck where you want it cleanly. And the more in-zone defense you need to play, the more likely it is you're going to make a mistake. Think about it like this. Remember what I had said before about the Oilers on the power play, how they're trying to constantly create conflict and make those penalty killers overlap with each other so that someone has to follow someone else. When you watch a team engage in a traditional cycle where we're playing along the perimeter, we're going to try and set up one of our flanks, whether it's a defenseman from up top or one of our wingers. We're going to try and set one of those guys up to walk the puck into a tighter area, whether it's in the slot if it's a forward, or at least to the top of the circles if you're a defenseman. We're trying to create an environment where that closest defensive player on the other team is going to have to come out of the structure, and they're going to have to put some pressure on wherever the puck is to try and create an advantage. You want to try and create possession, or at least force a loss of possession for the other team, create a 50-50 puck. The more defense you have to play, the more opportunities there are for something to go wrong. And that's really what stuck out to me about the game tonight. You look at the underlying numbers, the Oilers played a pretty good game. They had a modest edge in shots on goal. They had a modest edge in expected goals for the overall game. But the mistakes the Oilers made around the net front and in transition are what lost them this game. You think about that McDavid turnover where he fires a blind pass just assuming Evan Bouchard was going to be there. You think about that play at the net front, the net mouth scramble where Bouchard is laying on his stomach, desperately trying to get his puck in the shooting lane because he knows Connor Ingram doesn't have his net. Ingram already went down making the initial save. He didn't have time to get back up. And that's the beautiful part of being a cycle team, of being a forecheck team. It's not just you get one good chance. It's because we're in the offensive zone, we've got the puck in tight to the net front, we can get our own rebound and we can reestablish our cycle. It's because that rebound juts out to us from a favorable spot, we get an even more dangerous second chance. And that's one of the keys to sustaining offense in the postseason. You don't just want one scoring chance when you get the offensive zone. You want to spend 45 seconds, a minute and a half in there, and you want to get 2 or 3 looks. And even if only one of those 3 is a particularly dangerous look, each of those chances starts to accumulate in the flow of the game. And you start to wear the other team's defense down. You start to wear the other team's goalie down. And you get those guys where the more they have to be perfect, and that's the key. The more you make someone play defense, the more likely it is eventually they're going to mess up. The more opportunities you have to put guys on islands, to make them make plays, you are going to eventually get those breakdowns. And tonight, the Oilers did not do a good enough job in transition. The Oilers did not do a good enough job around the net front of giving Connor Ingram a clear sight line on those long distance shots. And yeah, deflections are hard. That's why they're dangerous chances. That's why there's very few guys who are good at them in today's NHL. But as much as this game was frustrating because this was definitely winnable, you got goals from everyone. You got goals down the line. You got a goal from Connor Murphy, of all people, and you still lost this game. It's frustrating to say the least, but Game 3 looms on the horizon, less than 48 hours away now. I'm going to take our second and final break on today's show. When we come back, we'll dive into the mental reset for Game 3 and some of the adjustments I would like to see right after this. There is nothing like playoff hockey live. The intensity, the rivalries, the crowd, it's just different when you're in the building. Playoffs are some of the best moments in sports, and being there in person is something every fan should experience. Game Time makes it so easy to find tickets, even for high-demand playoff games, in just a few taps. And with the Game Time guarantee, you know you're getting 100% authentic tickets delivered on time at the best price. You guys already know I frequent many a sporting event. I'm going to the Met game on Friday. I will be situated to watch Game 3 as soon as the Met game is over. I'll probably have to delay it 30 minutes or so and catch up in real time during intermissions, but I've got it down to a science as somebody with an active social life. The app makes the ticket buying experience so easy. My personal favorite part, the panoramic seat view, where they show you the view of the game in the app before you buy the ticket, so there are no surprises on game day. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON, spelled LOCKEDON, for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you so much to everybody who is hanging out on this Thursday edition of Locked On Oilers as we head into nitty-gritty time. Now, it is game 3 of the first round, but really quickly, you could be down 2-1 in a game 4, not in your rink. We usually don't say a series begins until the home team loses a game. A home team has lost the game in this series. The Oilers were clunky. They were sloppy. Their best players made quite a few mistakes. Their power play is lifeless. Their penalty kill is leaking. Their penalty kill isn't just leaking. Their penalty kill is actively taking on water, and the boat is sinking. Through 2 games, they've given up 3 power play goals on 5 attempts for the Ducks, 3 out of 5. Their penalty kill is running at a cold 40% right now. That's not going to cut it. We saw this be a massive problem for the Oilers last year in the first round against the Kings. As the playoffs went along, the penalty kill got a little bit better before ultimately really capitulating against the Panthers. And look, Connor Murphy alone was not going to be enough to fix this. Jason Dickinson was out tonight. Szymanski and Lazar drew in. Szymanski picked up his first NHL playoff goal, which was great. I was happy to see him out there at that point in the game. I hate when coaches lose guys in the shuffle, especially when they're younger, because it feels like they're being singled out for not having been there before, which of course brings up the catch-22. How are they supposed to get experience if they can't be trusted to play in those minutes? And if they never get trusted in those minutes, how are they supposed to eventually play those minutes? But I digress on that point. Number 1, adjustments-wise, the power play needs to get back to its basics. While the Draisaitl one-timer hasn't been there yet, Leon's timing, at least in that capacity, in his typical responsibilities, doesn't look to be his normal self. He picked up another couple points tonight. He was on the Oilers' best line. Again, him, Podkolzin, and Kapanen were great. Kapanen had another really impressive game. He set up the one Draisaitl goal, did a nice job there. I really like what that line is doing because they are sustaining zone time. They are playing on the boards. They're winning 50-50 pucks. They're winning hustle battles. And that's a very rudimentary metric for talent evaluation, who gets to the puck first. But the hungry wolf is going to get fed. And right now, with the Oilers in a weird state of flux where both their special teams units are struggling mightily, and their even strength offense has been pretty good, you're looking at, a Freaky Friday situation in relation to what they were in the regular season, where their power play was what had sustained them, and their even strength offense in particular, especially in their bottom 6, was particularly egregious. But here we are after 2 games, 0 for 6 on the power play, 2 for 5 on the penalty kill. That's not going to fly. As great as it is that they scored 4 even strength goals in this game, you gave up a shorthanded goal. You struggled mightily on the penalty kill, and you're not getting your power play goal. We did the Oilers math when we did the crossover episode with Kyle Carr on Monday. The Ducks took 3 penalties per game. The Oilers score 1 out of every 3 power plays. Based on them having had 6 power plays through 2 games, the Oilers should have scored 2 more goals. Now, obviously, math evens out in a big sample, and 2 games is not a big sample. I do not think the Oilers are doomed. I do not think the Oilers are broken. but they do have work to do. Some of that is going to be reinforced. And as much as it pains me, the Oilers are going to need to dumb things down a little bit here. Cleaner passes, especially in their own zone. If you are a forward, you need to be coming back, making yourself available, as big a target as possible. Give your defenders a chance to make the right play. And yes, it's frustrating as a forward on a team that has skill to have to be so actively involved in the defensive zone. But if you are going to win this time of year, you need to put your guys in as favorable a position as possible. Beyond Evan Bouchard, and I thought Jake Wallman was relatively good as far as breaking out tonight. When you have Bouchard and Wallman who are really crisp passers and can get the puck up ice in a wink, great. But when Nurse and Murphy are out there and they're getting shelled and they didn't have a great underlying numbers night, even though Murphy had the goal, you're going to have work to do. And the Ducks have made their counterpunch. The Ducks really put it on you. Cutter Gauthier was great tonight. I thought Jackson Lacombe was probably the best player on the ice for either team in this game. I thought he was everywhere. He skates so fluidly. He's so big. That's a problem. That's the type of guy who isn't going to shut your best players down. You know, Draisaitl burned him on the one Kapanen goal to win the game on Monday night, but that's an impact player who is really, really making his presence felt in this series defensively. And the Oilers right now are leaking badly on the back end. They desperately need a good defensive game, and that starts with making the game easier. Simple breakouts, clean transition. Let's go from defense to offense. Let's buy some offensive zone time. Let's make a good decision when we do the work. That I think is the one drawback of a cycle-heavy game is you can occasionally fall a little too in love with the point shots from defensemen, which, look, you have to take them so the defense is kept honest. But the 40-footer from Darnell Nurse through 6 bodies is probably not getting through, and if anything, it's probably going back the other way. That's not where you want to be. You need those shots in your repertoire, like I said, just to keep defenses honest. But by and large, your goal should be trying to manufacture offense in tight between the hash marks and below the circles. The closer your scoring chances, the more dangerous they are, the better the chances you have of scoring. And it's hard work. It is going to be a real challenge, especially if you fall behind. And that's the thing about the game tonight. Because the Oilers spent such a good chunk of the game trailing, it's a little harder to convince guys down a goal or two that, hey, we need to play dump and chase, we need to cycle, we need to wear these guys down. No, the fastest place to get somewhere is in a straight line. We want to create off the rush, we want to create lateral goalie movement, and we want to try and score as fast as possible. It's a little counterintuitive to slow the game down when you're down multiple goals and use up time, but you're probably going to get a more efficient or more dangerous look for that extended period of time you're willing to put in there. And the Oilers, in particular, that Kapanen, Podkolzin, and Draisaitl line, have done a tremendous job off the cycle through the first 2 games. Now we need to see that trickle a little bit more throughout the lineup. Take a little bit of heat off of your defense, a little bit of heat off of your goalie. Give yourself the best possible chance to win game number 3 in South California. That'll do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. Thank you so much to everybody that made Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. For your second listen, go check out Locked On NHL Game Night. Get caught up on the action around the league. If you're watching over on YouTube, we send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On YouTube channel. The link for the Everydayer Club is down in the show notes. Get involved, get in the mix. I will talk to you guys tomorrow ahead of game number 3 with some more notes, some more ideas. I'll talk to you guys then. Until then, let's go Oilers. Connor, hope your ankle feels better, brother.